Welcome once again to Syntax Error, your pretentious philosophical pedantic podcast ostensibly about video gaming and related topics therein. Warning, this podcast contains mature language, content, and spoilers. You have been warned. Welcome back to Syntax Error. Tonight's episode is going to be Best Villains and Villainy in Games. I'm Scott Thurlow, of course, as always, and I'm joined today by Stephen Omosi.
Hello.
And Ian Manzer.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Ian Manzer.
Alright, so here we go. I'm just going to ask you guys straight up. Name your favorite villain, or perhaps maybe give me a quick top 3 or something like that, from your gaming history that you like, or think are good, effective villains.
Alright, I'm going to jump in.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I've mentioned Final Fantasy VII several times. I know Ian doesn't really like it, but whatever.
Yes.
Yes. But Sephiroth, I thought, was a pretty effective villain. Very cool. I haven't played 3 or 6, depending, yet.
Poser.
I am planning on doing it soon. Yes, I know. I have to.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently that's a terrific villain too. I look forward to.
You'll have to compare.
I look forward
Sephiroth.
to. Yeah, exactly. I look forward to that. Great villain. I thought was always. Well, so let me ask you a question, Scott. Before I go on with this answer, I was kind of under the impression that we were going to be talking today about villains that overshadowed or were like better than their protagonists.
The actual protagonist. Mm-hmm.
Of the game. So that's kind of a little bit of what I prepared for.
Well, it kind of could go 50-50. Like, give me both then. What villains you thought were... I certainly, a number of them on my list are going to be, yes, that were more interesting and better characters than the actual protagonist, or that were just like great. They were equal. The protagonist was great, and also the villain was great. So
right.
Yeah, you can do both, and tell me which one you think it falls into.
So I had a couple categories of that type of thing. Like
okay.
I had Bowser on my list just because I thought his design was like way better than Mario.
One.
You know,
sure.
And one that I have on here is Mecha Hitler from
yeah.
the Wolfenstein games.
Classic, man.
Game. I don't think he showed up.
I think he was in Return to Castle. Which one?
Was he?
No,
he was in the original.
Okay,
he was the final boss in the original. Yeah,
I can't remember the number of Wolfensteins, but yes, it's a good villain in that sense. He's well designed.
But yeah, Wolfenstein 3D. That was Mecha Hitler. He was great.
Mm.
Anyway, let me yield the floor here.
Let's let Ian go.
I kind of went a different route than Steve-O. I thought that you were talking about effective villains because I tend to sympathize with the villains for whatever reason.
Okay,
that psychologically, I might
villains
have.
that you were, perhaps. Sorry to interrupt, real quickly. Link back to the empathy episode. Villains that you were empathetic towards, and/or again were more interesting than the protagonist. Go on.
But I was trying to think back to villains I really hated that I wanted to defeat, and like honestly, I came up short with that list. Is generally you fight like kind of like alien menaces or existential threats.
That's true.
Or the villain is so like distant that it's. I understand why my character's doing that, but I'm not invested in his defeat.
Good point.
Recently, though, I did find a very effective villain in the Game of Thrones Telltale games. Lord Whitehill. Man, I want to strangle that motherfucker. But that could be a character more of it being a Game of Thrones plot than...
That's true, which could be like specific toward that.
Yeah, and the Game of Thrones is very good about making like very effective villains. But beyond that, like... Again, I have made clear in other podcasts that Fallout 3 or 6, depending on your interpretation, Kefka is...
Fallout 3? I think you mean Final Fantasy.
Oh, did I say Fallout? I apologize.
So let's just clear this up, because you've mentioned this game in several podcasts, and you always say
it's a problem
Final Fantasy 3 or 6.
Japan.
So in Japan it was Final Fantasy 6. In America it was Final Fantasy 3.
Yes.
That's what I thought, but I just wanted to make it clear for everybody, including myself.
Yes. Kefka was such a prominent villain who reappeared throughout the game and who did horrendous things and was constantly a thorn in your side. And eventually he becomes a god and wipes out the entire world, and you're very invested in seeing him defeated.
It's interesting. So I want to bring back real quickly something you said. Basically, it's effective because he keeps like he's not removed. Like you've seen that in a lot of games where you're told the villain is the villain, but he never really shows. He never does anything. Everyone just tells you he's the villain. You know. Actually, I think that's interesting.
What I used to play a lot of RPGs when I was young, and one of the things that really made an impression on me in my youth, and I was on the Lufia series, where they would actually have the villains wipe out towns, or in the Breath of Fire games,
right, yeah.
where you actually saw the direct effects of the villain upon the world.
Sure.
And that made you... it invested you in the battles.
It was more immersive in a sense, yeah.
I'm thinking of modern-day RPGs. Dragonage Origins. I don't believe you played Origins.
I have not played Origins. We'll check out our Dragonage podcast, though.
What were the monsters called again? The Demon Spawn or something like that?
No, damn it. The Blight calls it the Darkspawn.
Darkspawn,
yeah.
that's it. The Darkspawn, you're always told that the Darkspawn were coming. But no matter how long you took to complete your side quests, they're always around the corner from...
well, I mean, sure. I mean, that's the nature of games. It's going to be that. Like,
just over the next hill.
But that's what I said. Back when maybe it's nostalgia factor here, but sure. I remember actually seeing like towns like wiped off the map where I had previously been. I forget the name of this game, but it was a PS1 title where they killed the first merchant in the game, and just the fact that he died was such a shock because you don't really. But these are the effective. I guess we're getting into what makes an effective villain now.
Sure, we'll certainly get into it.
I feel that actually seeing the repercussions of a villain's actions manifest in that world.
Of course, that's effective. Yes.
I was just going to add that I think that the Final Fantasy games seem to be in general good at making the main villain present throughout the plot. Clearly, so 7 is the only one that I have played all the way through. I've played a few of the other games, but never beaten them. But Sephiroth is the same way in that game, and it seems like I don't remember much of 8 because I think that game was fucking terrible.
I was actually going to bring up 8, which is I think the one example of. I had no idea what was going on in that plot.
I hated that game. Like I tried to play it again like years later, and I couldn't get through it.
They had good set pieces, but the collective story was just confusing.
Was like, what the fuck? Yeah.
I remember at a point when you went back in time, and you were playing like I guess your parents like fighting or something like that.
I don't remember.
But again, it was just it lost me. So that's one example of not. Another good Final Fantasy example is. Did any of you play Final Fantasy X?
I did not.
No, I might have played a little bit of it, or I think I watched.
You guys have played the most.
I think I watched
me.
Mike D play a little bit of it when he was playing it. Yeah.
They had a good thing because Sin was the great monster that you always had to fight. That was this destructive force. But they also had a lot of secondary characters, including the Church of Yevon, which was kind of in a sense, the real villain of the game, and you saw their corruption throughout. So, and those are two other examples of one Final Fantasy where it worked and one where it didn't.
Right, sure. So it's like, basically, it's obviously going to be more effective villainously, if you will, in the narrative if you see the impact of their actions rather versus being told, everyone in the world is like, he's the villain. You're like, yeah, okay, but nothing's like, that never happened to me or anything. Like, maybe it'll happen later, but it's sort of a setup thing. But let me just answer because I haven't said my.
Oh, apologies.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
My answers, please. Well, I'm going to pick two recent ones. I totally love Handsome Jack as a villain in Borderlands 2. He wasn't in the first one. I did not particularly like the first Borderlands game. It was okay, but it had almost like zero plot or like a very bare bones plot. It was all right, but it was fine setup. In 2, when he's introduced, and I mentioned this briefly in the Betrayal episode, he the setup is he betrays you instantly, and then he becomes a villain. He's a villain through the whole story arc. And here's something to answer another question we just said. Here's why I think he's effective. Because he's personable. He is very well written, and his voice acting is amazing. I forget the guy's name, but he's just so good at it. And he's a very fully 3D realized character. And I think another effective thing they did is that, yes, he's like, you're basically racing him to the MacGuffin, like the vault in the game. And yeah, things will change, like towns will blow up or like people will be gone and shit.
And like every once in a while, when you do a quest, he'll call up, be like, "Hey, nice job, not gonna win though. Like I ain't gonna help you." Like he'll like taunt you throughout the whole game, and it's very well done. So I thought that was cool. And as I mentioned in bonus points recently, I'm playing the pre-sequel, in which it's sorts of he's not like you're playing for him, you're working with him. I'm actually playing as his body double, which is kind of funny. Like it changes some of the lines in the quests, but they're because he's so I think popular and well done. They're giving him his own backstory. This game is about how he became a villain, which I think is very interesting. And of course, my second one I'm going to say is Andrew Ryan. It's probably one of my favorite in quote villains. Again, it's Bioshock. Yes, is a very weird like outlier example, but regardless, again, he's well acted. He's personable. He's antagonistic towards you at least because of various plot related reasons. But regardless, he still is an effective, kind of scary, intimidating figure.
But I'm interested because both of those characters are ones you admire.
Yes,
and just because there's plenty of characters
I get it, sure.
Villains I really enjoy, and like this is not a video game thing, but I love Hannibal Lecter. And I think he is very. But is this the shadow? Is this shadowed by my
right? Is it colored by that?
Like not only nostalgia, but like the fact that I personally like these characters. And is that the best villain? Shouldn't a villain be someone you aren't sorry to see lose?
I get it. I agree. So like it's whether or not effective in quotes would be the question here, right? Are we asking that we like them as a character, or was it narratively done in such that they are indeed you hate this person and they're such a you take them to be a threat and a menace and you want to get rid of them?
I think both avenues are
valid.
Can be very effective and
I agree.
Certainly valid.
They could intersect almost. I was going to say.
Honestly, I probably like villains better when I have some amount of empathy for them.
Well, sure, of course. You don't give a shit about the villain no matter what. But,
right, and like
or any
it's not necessarily like if I especially in a video game, if it's a hard choice to kill the villain, I think that's awesome. Like if I have to make the hard choice to kill that guy because it's the thing that I should do being my character,
sure, I
think that's great.
And this is an interesting kind of narrative question, is that based on society we should have we have to support the protagonist if they're morally correct, but the anti-hero or the villain are generally much more interesting. They say like an action, the success of an action movie is based off upon the villain,
sure,
not necessarily the hero, because the hero is generally bland.
He's going to be the moral good, lawful good, or whatever.
Exactly,
regardless, yeah.
And it's much more like there's much more depth to people who
I agree with that.
Darkness. So Han Solo is a much more interesting character than Luke Skywalker is. But again, like
I think that's a valid point and an interesting one.
I will go back to that.
Not often thought of, I think, not often brought up.
Like the sympathetic villain is very interesting, but having a villain that, like, that a game designer makes it personally, like, to the point that you're understanding why the protagonist wants to see the fall, and it's not just because you're this hero of time or you're this like or something happens but you're not like attached to, so you're just going through the motions of playing this character, but to really draw you in and create emotion within you to despise. And again, like in Game of Thrones, in the TV series or in the novel, how many people were rooting for a teenager to die the most horrible death possible?
Sure.
Right, and I think it takes a certain brilliance as a writer to write either one of those really well.
A certain level of skill.
Either one of those, like if you, so it's easy to make someone who's unlikable, I think, but it's not easy. But it's not easy to make someone who's completely detestable, so much so that you want to like murder them.
Yes.
Right. At the same time, it's very hard to make you want to murder somebody that you like. And
or if you at least you grow to like them throughout the plot.
So like if either one of those are your mission at the end of the game, I think that the writer's done a good job.
Yes, agreed.
I'm by no means trying to devalue a well-written, interesting villain. they're some of my favorite characters. But the question is, have you guys ever had a villain that you were really invested in seeing destroyed?
Yes. All right. So I'll bring one up again. I brought this game up because it has become one of my favorite games when I played it. Voss in Far Cry 3 was, I think, one of the best because he fits into both. I liked him. He was personable. He would give him. He was again Michael Mando, I believe his name. He was in Better Call Saul. Check him out. He did an amazing job. They even I'll tell you guys a quick backstory to this. He was hired to do the voice acting, but he showed up dressed in character almost. Like he shaved his head. He had a mohawk. He wasn't supposed to do. Somebody else was supposed to do the mocap for him. He was just supposed to speak the lines. He showed up and they were and then he read the lines. Did a house reading. He read them and they were like, "We like you. We want you to do the mocap. We're gonna read it." They had a different even character model design for Voss, and no, we're gonna redesign him for you. It's gonna be you. And he was like, awesome. And yeah, he does a really good job. He gives you amazing fucked up badass menacing speeches and does fucked up things. And I both liked and liked him. I think that was one of the best. I thought he was a very well done and written again and formulated character, but he was a psychopathic villain that I was invested in seeing being brought down. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I know that one falls into both. I think, which is why, as I say to many people, Far Cry 3 may be one of the best games that has come out in the past 5 years.
As far as this goes, I don't know if I can think of one off the top. I'm sure there's some villain in some game where I was playing the game and I was like, I need to kill this motherfucker immediately. But nothing's coming to me off the top of my head right now. At the moment, maybe at some point throughout, I'll think of one. But
all right, so real quick, I'll give you a little comment. The villain, it's a trope. It's called the villain protagonist. Stories that are told from the villain's point of view, which is what the actual trope is. But it's you sort of the anti-hero thing, etc. So real quickly, in the pre-sequel, as I'm playing as again handsome Jack's doppelganger, and there's a lot of funny quotes and extra lines that you get to hear because of that. His skill tree is really funny too. And some of the class mods were it'll be different versions of I'm a free market villain protagonist. It's all little funny little comment joke. Every class mod you get will have a different little comment upon that. I thought that's sort of little light meta humorous touch there.
Was it you're always an antagonist though?
No,
right?
not always. Some of them say protagonist.
Really?
They change. Yeah,
the only ones I've seen I've watched you play a little bit and
there's many of them that change.
Great.
There's a number of titles that they mess with there. So anyways. Go ahead.
Actually, I think as I've been reminiscing about games that I used to play, I don't think there's any villain in Final Fantasy Tactics that I really wanted to see dead. Except that there was, in a sense, there's a trope called that one boss, I believe, which is a very difficult boss.
Annoying boss, that
you had to play over and over again. So by the time I was 3 hours into trying to beat this boss, I was very invested in seeing him dead.
The mechanics of the game made you hate him, not his characterization.
Yeah, but the effectiveness of this game it was sort of, in a sense, Game of Thrones, way before Game of Thrones even existed.
Okay, sure.
And the intrigue and the plot detail and characters, murdering characters you like, not based on combat, but poisoning them or stabbing them in the back. It drew me into that world very.
Sure. Okay.
I feel like Final Fantasy is known for their ultimate bosses, the ultimate weapons.
The boss, yeah.
So
true.
Yes, I felt the same way after trying to beat Ruby and Emerald Weapon in Final Fantasy VII for hours and hours and hours. When I killed them, it was the best feeling ever. Actually, similar to that, I just started playing Dark Souls, and
it gives you that
the
feeling. Bosses
in that game are so hard and take such a long time to get to that when you beat them, it gives you such a good feeling of So there was a Penny Arcade comic that came out a couple weeks ago about Bloodborne, and it's basically the same thing. It's Gabe is I quit this game, and then it's a text message says I quit this game, and then a couple hours later he's I just beat that boss, and now I'm Jesus Christ.
Sure, that's funny, and I get it. It gives you a sense of catharsis, victory.
Right.
However,
they're not necessarily antagonists of the game.
That's what I was going to bring up. Exactly. There's no story. Just here's a crazy fucked up 5-armed 7-legged monster face thing and beat it. But that's it. As Ian just said, the mechanics sort of make you hate it. It's not quite the narrative, but it can still be somewhat effective because yes, you get that feeling of elation when you beat it. Sure. So let me make up another one. You guys, I can't believe you haven't said this. GLaDOS, maybe.
I was waiting for you to say it.
Yeah, that may be again, but she's definitely menacing, of course. But again, because of the writing and because of the voice acting, you almost like her as a villain, even though she's like outright telling you she's trying to murder you, like more or less.
So when I was playing that game, I was somewhat upset when I beat GLaDOS because I just wanted to hear more of the banter that you had, like between, like
exactly.
That she was like giving you basically. Although the song at the end kind of negated that a little bit because it was fucking amazing.
It's fine for that.
See, I feel the issue is as much as I love Portal, don't get me wrong. The shell had no personality. In fact, her name is very appropriate. She's
sure. Well, sort of a comment on that, but you're right. Like she was a silent protagonist, so there's no.
So there's no.
Really.
I had no GLaDOS is very interesting. But I had no kind of personal there's nothing in a sense at stake. I never felt that.
I see what you mean.
Shell, it was Shell, right?
It was Shell.
Shell, okay.
Yeah.
Was I didn't care if she lived or died.
In fact, she died multiple times throughout the game.
Yeah.
I real quick joke, I always like to say that it would have been funnier if the villain in Portal was the companion cube, somehow, that would have been really funny. But anyway, it's a little joke there.
Yeah.
Go on. Anything else? I have another one to bring up. So speaking of
I was going to say, well, like the Doom games are even, or Wolfenstein, like Mecha Hitler was the same thing. Your dude doesn't really have a personality.
EJ Blazkowicz has one. He has personalities. I like killing Nazis.
Yeah, well, that's basically. So you're either, or in Doom, you're a space marine that likes killing monsters.
Think of it, the free world is at stake.
Come on, man. Seriously,
it's true.
But I will say, as I said, I mentioned briefly, in the New Order, he's very well characterized, and he's very well done. That's completely it's a newer one. But all right, let me bring it back a bit. Another one. Well, it's Valve, I believe, right? So Dr. Breen in Half-Life. But Gordon Freeman, of course, is a silent protagonist. But I think Dr. Breen he's. I don't like him. I don't want to be on his side, but they draw him very well. He's morally gray almost, and I think again because the writing and the acting are so top notch, he's effective in that kind of sense.
But as Freeman, you kind of have a personality that's thrust upon you by all the characters that you meet. People talk to you and tell you things that are about yourself, basically.
Ross Scott thrust a personality.
Yeah, that's true. But when you played Half-Life, you haven't seen Freeman's mind or anything, so it's not like you're doing that. But anyways,
and if you haven't, you should.
You should definitely check out Freeman's mind. Shout out to him for that. All right, let me bring up one more. I mentioned the first Bioshock. I don't think you guys played Bioshock Infinite, so I'm gonna have to spoil it real quick. I mean, sorry.
Go ahead.
In that one, the villain is you, essentially, from an alternate timeline. It's sort of a closed time loop thing. But Booker talks. Booker has many spoken lines, and so does Comstock, and they're basically each other from separate timelines. So I thought that was a pretty good one, a good twist.
It's actually interesting because Infamous 1
is like that. Yes, that's right, and that was on my list.
Yes,
go ahead.
You're fighting a future version of
yourself. Yeah.
It was an interesting a villain.
It's not the most mind blowing thing, but it was well used. I think in both, probably better in Infinite. But
it's certainly been done before.
Yeah,
but
sure.
It's.
But again,
it's still
depending on the quality.
If you do that trope well, it's. I like it. I always. Yeah. I'm always going to be a sucker for it. You know,
any trope well.
I'm oh shit, you're fighting yourself. Oh, it's awesome. You have that moment, that oh shit moment, when you figure it out or whatever, or when it's revealed.
I actually want to talk about Infamous for a moment. I only played the first one. I was going to play the second one, but the line was too long at GameStop.
Pissed and left, yeah.
Yes. But the first one, you kind of have three main villains of there. Kind of bosses of each section of the game.
Right.
One is this crazy chick, Sasha, who you actually can have a love interest with if you play the evil side of it, which I thought was a nice touch.
It is.
There's this orphan of a very rich family, who died. Sort of like the Bruce Wayne of evil.
I thought you were going to say Annie.
He becomes homeless and gathers together a homeless army with his he's a very interesting.
Would you say he's bum rushing you? Anyway.
And then you have your future self, and all of these groups are kind of fighting each other and working very much like villains in comic books. They have tenuous alliances that fall apart and I don't know. It felt very much like video game, comic developed villains there, which aren't necessarily always the most in depth villains.
Sure,
but that was very effective. I didn't want to see any of them die, but I wasn't gunning for any of them. Let's
Fair
say.
enough.
But they kept me interested.
So they were well characterized, and you liked them as characters. Essentially.
Yeah, enough for the villains
for their roles.
Yes,
sure.
That was kind of what Infamous was going for, right? I never played it, but it was like
it was a comic.
It was trying to feel comic booky, like
sure.
Developing powers, stuff like that.
Very successful on that part. I very much enjoyed the first one. So
sure.
Okay.
All right. So let me bring up one more, just a classic one too. Like Ganondorf is probably like. It's more of yes of a dichotomy. Link is the hero of courage, and Ganondorf was he always wanted to try first of power, right? Wants power all the time, wants to rule everything. But like, I mean, he's been characterized so many times, like even not if not to a great degree in every game, in so many games anyway, that like what kind of villain he is, and that's what he's going to want.
Which game do you think he's the best?
The best one, in maybe Ocarina of Time. I think he has more like it, again because you could have more spoken lines and stuff in that game, and it was a new gen Zelda, so he could be. The technology allowed them to have him more characterized. So I think he was pretty effective in it.
Zelda 2, because he's not in there at all except if you lose.
That's a good point. Yeah, like I mean, again, it was Link to the Past maybe also close because he was Aghanim, like it's really him, and then you go to the Dark World and that's really cool. And the final boss fight when he turns into it was a good one. So one of those would be my answer to that question.
None of us have played any of the Wii versions.
I
right?
played a couple of them, but I never played them all the way through, so I can't tell the story.
I heard that
all the way.
2 of them were really good.
Twilight Princess,
Wind Waker, and that is supposed to be good.
Wind Waker, yeah, I heard was really good.
Yeah. Well, Wind Waker was GameCube.
Was it?
Yes.
It might have been.
What's the one I'm thinking of?
They might have reported it for the Wii too.
Oh, they could have. But
Twilight Princess and Sword of the something something like that.
Skyward Sword.
Skyward Sword. That's the one I was thinking of. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you're right.
I don't have a Wii, nor do I have any intentions of buying one.
Yeah, same thing.
I wouldn't mind getting a Wii if I could get it for really cheap to play that game and possibly Metroid.
Yeah. So yeah, it's true. Okay, so you got anything else? I got one more to bring up. Where was it? It was what did I just say? Oh, the Joker, of course. Especially in the Arkham Asylums, but the Joker sort of his weirdo little example, little island to himself because he's going to come back no matter what they do to him.
I don't think taking villains in games that directly come from other sources are really the fair assessments of.
Is it valid? Okay, all right, fair enough.
I was gonna say the same thing actually. The Joker has this whole history already.
As I said, it's in another medium. So yeah, you're right. They're not making him up for the game. He already exists as a character.
Well, not only that, but he comes in with a whole load of baggage already.
That's what I'm saying.
Your mind is made up of.
You guys are right.
Unless you can't come into the Batman games in a complete vacuum, your mind is already made up about how you feel about the Joker.
That. I mean, just mean
which they do a good spin on him in the games. Don't get me wrong, but they have to make that character based on preconceived notions that fans already have,
That's what I'm saying. I mean, you're right. He's almost automatically going to be effective because you know what he is, how kind of villain he is. I'm just saying, it's a good one to use, even if he didn't originate from video games.
It's hard to, if you put in any kind of effort to mess up the Joker, as a villain.
That's true. That's good. It's a tough task. I would like to see somebody fuck up having the Joker be a villain.
Listen, I'm sure in comic books it's been done many times before, but
that's funny though. It's funny to think about. I have one more. I'm going to ask Ian this. How well do you remember Secret of Evermore?
Fairly well.
Okay, do you remember who the actual big bad in that was?
The robotic butler.
The butler, yeah. Which we should have mentioned that in the betrayal thing. But yeah, it was funny too. The whole time, it's Carlton, I believe his name was.
Yes, and, Carl Tron.
It becomes Carl Tron. Yeah. But yeah, that was an early messing with the trope. He comes back for the final battle. It's like a giant butler head, and you're like, what the fuck is happening here? He's like, it was me the whole time. I'm the butler, and I'm evil.
There's an interesting trend in Japanese, old Japanese RPGs with making religion be evil.
Sure.
I mentioned already Final Fantasy X, but Breath of Fire 2. Did you ever play that, Scott?
I played one of the Breath of Fires. I don't remember which one it was. We talked about it in a podcast a couple weeks ago, but I don't remember which one I actually played.
Yeah, it was out of my wheelhouse. For sure.
But throughout the game, you're basically combating a corrupt church that's actually kind of worshiping the devil.
Yes, whatever that one was, I remember some of that.
Yes. And I think that when you're if you can't write a specific villain.
Then have that be the villain. That's
just
a good
make
point.
the church the villain,
Or religion,
not
or
a church,
whatever
but
it is.
have a conglomeration of sorts.
That's true. Yeah.
Be the villain. Go on.
Well, yeah, well, like, you're right. It's sort of like an evil cult thing, like the Silent Hill thing. Like, yeah, like Pyramid Head, but like the cult of whatever it is, like the town itself.
or just sub in like an evil corporation or something,
yeah,
like
Umbrella,
Umbrella,
whatever.
whatever.
Silent
what
Hill,
have you.
the town is the villain, really, and all these monsters are just in it.
Actually, bringing up Resident Evil, I thought of a villain that I was very happy to finally be able to kill. Not that he had a great personality, but Nemesis.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, fair enough.
Actually being able to defeat him
I remember that. Yeah, you're right. That
at
was
the end of
effective.
the game was
Sure.
cathartic.
Yeah,
I feel like
exactly.
just beating someone named Nemesis adds so much to it.
I mean, like, yeah, so like they like maybe intentionally or not, like offhandedly, like commented upon it.
I was very reckless.
They're like, "What should we name our villain?"
Let's name him Nemesis.
Sure, go on.
I
We
was
just
ver-
call him Antagonist. Sorry. Go on.
Never mind.
No. Go.
Anyway, so actually, Nemesis at one point, I was very reckless with saving, so I just had one save.
Tossing
file.
away ribbons and shit.
So he once trapped me in a save room on low
I
health,
think
and I
that
couldn't
might
get
have
out
happened
of
to me
that.
too. Something like that. I remember that.
I had to restart the game.
Yeah.
So
Fair enough.
it was very effective.
Speaking now you mentioned that, so yes, I think Resident Evil 2 for N64 is the first Resident Evil I got into, and the guy's name in that was Mr. X. Like, you want to talk about generic fucking names, but regardless, like,
I remember that one.
he was a good one because he wasn't like a crazy monster. He was just a big guy, and he would just show up. And sometimes he wouldn't even do anything. He would just be like, you go around, you do whatever little part of you find the item that you need, and you come back to a different part you've already been to. I'm sorry, and he's just like there. He's not doing anything though. He just like stands creepily there, and you're like, well, it's like a jump scare almost. But like, you think there's gonna be a boss fight, and then he's just like slowly walking down the court. You have all the time in the world to run away from him, but he's relentlessly coming after you, like no matter what. It's pretty. I think it's very effective, and like, while he's not again the best characterization of a villain ever, like it's effective in a horror game.
It's like a Terminator scene.
yeah,
it's
it's
like,
basically
just, like
he's
slowly
like,
stalking you.
exactly is that. Good.
So I'm kind of interested in seeing what your guys' opinion is on what makes an effective villain.
Okay.
We covered a couple of different topics.
Okay,
One,
sure.
whether if you're personally like the villain or not, the difficulty in whether he's an unstoppable
Good
force
point, yeah.
chasing you constantly. What else do we? A personal involvement in your plotline, if you're invested.
Well,
in
if he's
seeking his
well
destruction.
characterized towards the protagonist, or if
Yes.
he's just yeah, okay, go on.
So, what do you think the most important aspect of creating a video game villain is?
Good question. Like, I mean, I don't know if I can answer it with the most important aspect. I think it's made up of a number of things. As I said, like, you know, the writing of his lines, and again, like, I've seen. I can't think of a good example for you, or like one off the top of my head, but certainly you've seen good lines delivered badly by like just not a great of a voice actor, or sometimes vice versa, where a great voice actor is working with like terrible lines. So, you know, it's got to be like both of those things have to sort of converge to a level of quality that is more effective, and that's why, like, yes, again, a recent example, but I think Handsome Jack is one of the best because he's so personable and his lines are they're funny and they're dark, you know, they're also threatening at the same time, and it all makes sense to what's happening. Like Voss was the same thing. So, like, I think, like, it sort of has to be, like, a combination of at least those two things, and maybe other things, too. Yeah, maybe, like, it has to be a good relationship between you. Like, Voss also was effective because he was basically threatening your friends and family. Like, that's a very personal, you know, clash there, struggle. You know, like, versus, like, you know, another game where, yes, you're told, like, oh, the evil president of whatever, but it's not like he's not doing anything personally to affect you. You're just told that he's, like, the bad guy who's destroying, you know, like, it's not effective anymore, or less effective at least. So yeah, to answer your question, like, I think it's sort of a number of factors that come together, and if they come together well, then it's going to be an effective villain.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think a lot of it has to do with, and we spoke about several different types of villains tonight, and I think that all of them can be good, and probably a lot of it has to do with the way that your plot shakes out.
Sure.
What the most effective villain is for that plot. But personally, like I said a little bit earlier, I think that the villain that you kind of like or have an affinity for makes a really effective villain, and like I like to see that one personally. You know, it's kind of you have the knowledge that this person is doing things that are evil or like against your protagonist's way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
However, they also, have something about them that you really identify with.
Something about them gets you, yeah.
That you that you're like, oh. I think a really effective one is when you think that if you're playing a game, you think that your character, if they were just better somehow, could like change this guy into like a good dude, or like change this woman into a good chick or whatever. Like, I think that's always an awesome way to go with a villain.
Personally, I am anti-authority. And this is incredibly biased when I talk about what my kind of what I think the most effective one is.
It's valid.
They all are, yeah.
Games are about like being someone different, experiencing adventure that you can't get in
real life,
in real life, and having freedoms that you don't have. And when someone takes that away from you in a game, when someone is not only like has authority over you to your detriment, but is contemptuous of you with
outright,
that authority.
Yeah, sure.
That's why I mentioned earlier with the Game of Thrones Telltale, that guy taking your home away from you and is snubbing his nose at you with it. I was playing a game recently, Hand of Fate, where this guy just sits at a table across from you and just talks shit the entire time about how weak and pathetic you are. And
that's funny.
And or as I mentioned, that those creatures you cannot kill that stalk you throughout a game. Those are my favorite villains because they inherently go against what video games are about.
Sure, that's a good point.
Upon beating them, you're achieving a sense of elation and a sense of victory that I feel rarely accomplish in games.
Sure, yeah. I mean, again, if it comes to that level, then it's going to sort of like, you get sort of a little more reward out of it. Like, yeah, fuck yeah, I did it, like, etc. I exactly what you're saying. So, two quick things. We mentioned this game a lot, and I know we always do, but I think you can speak to this, E. Chrono Trigger, Lavos, of course, is the big villain, but he's just he can't really do anything to you because he's burrowing in the earth, and yes, that's a very existential threat. However, Queen Zeal is more like she's a more plain view villain, if you will. The fucking Black Omen shows up in every goddamn time thing, and like she's outright like messing with the world. You know what I mean? So she's sort of like the big bad in quotes, but not really. But I think she's an effective villain because you can have more of an antagonistic relationship with her versus Lavos, who's just there, bearer, in the world.
Yeah, but Queen Zeal is only the third villain. Because the first third is true. Magus.
And then Ozzy as well a little bit. Yeah, that's true.
I guess
Magus is the first big bad. Chrono Trigger is a very interesting game, very much beloved by me and many others.
But that isn't exclusive to Chrono Trigger.
That's true.
A lot of
You're
the
right.
Japanese RPGs
are like that. That's true. I'm just pointing to that one as an example of it. Sure.
Had a kind of existential threat as a villain.
And then a more humanized.
Sephiroth isn't the villain of Final Fantasy VII. Right.
Genova,
yes. Sure.
And then, like a number of the Breath of Fires, as I keep bringing up, you're dealing with multiple like secondary villains as you make your way up the ladder. So again, like that's kind of a standard way of introducing small, introducing segmented villains, segmented big bads throughout the game.
Sure, fair enough. And so I'll just bring it back real quickly to my favorite. Like in Bioshock, they're both like you're told Andrew Ryan is the villain, and then of course it's revealed that I guess he still sort of is. But so is Atlas. You fucked both ways. They're both the villain, and you end up killing both of them.
Nothing. You have no good choice.
Yeah, I don't know. That's why I think, of course, I'm always going to say it's the most effective one because
your only choice is yourself.
Yeah, a man chooses himself, I suppose. Go ahead. Okay, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. Like I think I think the heart of the matter. I think we discussed at length was quite interesting. Like what consists of an effective villain and why, like your biases are going to play as to whether or not you think A is effective and why so, and the quality of character building that went into it is going to I would say certainly determine what your relationship to that character or villain, even as player or as character you're supposed to be immersing yourself into, is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that the villain is. I think this is a good discussion because the villain is half of the game. Or
at least it should be.
Or probably, no, you're right. Should be half of the game. Perhaps isn't always. Mm-hmm. But I think that's a flaw. I think that's a flaw if you don't have a good antagonist.
Agreed.
Whereas you should be invested in your own story, but if the game is done well, you're also invested in either the antagonist's story surrounding them, or just trying to get to them to fucking destroy them, as we were saying earlier.
Sure.
And I think that's the mark of a good game.
I'm going to say the mark of a good narrative is when did I become the bad guy?
I agree with that.
Well, that's always a nice twist. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if well pulled off, then it's a very effective kind of thing to do. Sure.
Or if you can't even tell who is good or who is bad, that's also
Yeah. Sure. All right. So I think we had a nice little discussion about villains and villainy and which ones we think are good and which ones, or perhaps were supposed to be good but didn't quite end up getting there. So I think next time we will see you then, first of all, and we'll be talking about remakes and remasters, so check that one out. And for now, see you later, kiddos.
This has been Syntax Error. Thank you as always for listening, and we will see you next time. Music by Stephen Hermosi, editing and engineering by Chris Morgan. Syntax Error is part of a Lost Signals Productions, all rights reserved.